The gunshot echoed through the small town of Redemption Creek, Arizona Territory, 1879, shattering the peaceful evening air as Nora Whitfield clutched her 4-year-old daughter Emma to her chest and ran toward the only sanctuary she could think of, the weathered wooden church that stood at the edge of town. Blood trickled down her arm where a bullet had grazed her, but the physical pain paled in comparison to the ache in her heart. Just 3 months a widow, and now this Frank Lawson and his gang of outlaws had returned to finish what they'd started when they killed her husband Thomas. "Mama, I'm scared," Emma whimpered against her shoulder, tiny fingers digging into Nora's worn calico dress. "Hush now, darling," Nora whispered, her breath coming in desperate gasps as she pushed through the church's heavy oak door and locked it behind her. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through stained glass windows that cast colored shadows across the wooden pews. Another gunshot outside made her jump. They were getting closer. "Where are you, Widow Whitfield?" Lawson's voice carried through the night. "You can't hide forever. You saw what you shouldn't have seen." Nora knew what he meant. 3 days ago, she'd witnessed Lawson and his men robbing the stagecoach that carried the mining payroll. She'd recognized them clearly, and they'd seen her too. Now they were determined to silence her permanently. "Up we go," she whispered to Emma, making her way to the back of the church where a narrow staircase led to the bell tower. It wasn't much of a hiding place, but it was better than nothing. Each step creaked beneath their weight as they climbed higher. The bell tower was small and dusty, with just enough room for Nora to sit with Emma in her lap. She could hear the men outside, their voices growing louder as they approached the church. "Check inside." Lawson bellowed, and Nora's heart nearly stopped when she heard the rattle of the church door. It wouldn't hold them for long. "Please God," she prayed silently, rocking Emma in her arms. "Please protect us." The sound of splintering wood confirmed her worst fears. They had broken through. "Search everywhere," Lawson commanded. "She's in here somewhere." Heavy footsteps echoed through the church below as the men overturned pews and searched behind the altar. Nora pressed a hand over Emma's mouth, silencing her frightened whimpers as tears streamed down both their faces. Then came a commotion outside, more gunshots, shouts, the thunder of hooves. The outlaws below cursed and ran back outside. More gunfire erupted, followed by the sound of retreating horses. Silence fell over the church. Nora held her breath, unsure if the danger had passed or if this was just a momentary reprieve. Emma trembled against her, exhausted from fear. Minutes that felt like hours passed before Nora heard new footsteps entering the church. These were different, measured, cautious. A single set of boots on the wooden floor. "Hello," a deep voice called out. "Is anyone here?" Nora remained silent, clutching Emma tighter. The footsteps moved across the church floor, then began ascending the stairs to the bell tower. Each creak of wood sent a fresh wave of terror through Nora's body. She looked around desperately for something to use as a weapon, but found nothing. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. A tall silhouette appeared in the doorway, backlit by the moonlight from below. Nora could make out the broad shoulders, the cowboy hat, but not the face. The stranger stepped forward, and moonlight from a small window illuminated his features, a weathered face with kind eyes, stubbled jaw, and a concerned expression. He holstered his gun when he saw them. "You're safe now," he said gently, kneeling down to their level. "Those men won't be bothering you anymore." Nora stared at him, wanting to believe but too frightened to trust. "Who are you?" "Wyatt Nash," he replied, removing his hat respectfully. "Deputy Marshal. I've been tracking Lawson's gang for months." Emma peeked out from her mother's embrace, studying the stranger with solemn eyes. "Are the bad men gone?" she asked in a small voice. Wyatt nodded, his expression softening as he looked at the child. "They're gone, little one. I chased them off, and they won't be coming back tonight." "How do I know you're really a marshal?" Nora asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Without a word, Wyatt reached inside his leather vest and produced a silver badge that caught the moonlight. "Mrs. Whitfield, I presume." Nora nodded slowly. "I heard about what happened to your husband. I'm sorry for your loss," he said, genuine sympathy in his voice. "And I know you witnessed the stage robbery. That was brave of you to come forward." "Not brave," Nora whispered. "Just right." Wyatt offered a hand to help her up. Let's get you and your daughter somewhere safer for the night. Lawson and his men might return. Hesitantly, Nora accepted his help, wincing as the movement aggravated her injured arm. You're hurt, Wyatt observed, concern deepening the lines around his eyes. It's just a graze, Nora assured him, though the blood had soaked through her sleeve. Still needs tending, he insisted. Can you walk? Nora nodded, lifting Emma into her arms despite the pain. The little girl rested her head on her mother's shoulder, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Let me, Wyatt offered, holding out his arms for the child. After a moment's hesitation, Nora allowed him to take Emma, who went to him without protest, too tired to be afraid anymore. They descended the stairs carefully, Wyatt leading the way. The church interior was in disarray, pews overturned, hymnals scattered across the floor, a testament to the outlaw's violent search. My horse is outside, Wyatt said. We'll ride to the sheriff's office in town. It's the safest place tonight. As they stepped outside, Nora saw a magnificent chestnut stallion waiting patiently by the hitching post. The night was quiet now, the stars bright in the clear Arizona sky. Wyatt helped Nora onto the horse first, then handed Emma up to her before mounting himself. His solid presence behind her felt reassuring as they set off toward town at a steady trot. Thank you, Nora said softly, her words nearly lost in the night breeze. For saving us. Just doing my job, madam, Wyatt replied, though there was something in his voice that suggested it was more than that. As they rode through the darkness, Nora allowed herself to believe, for the first time since her husband died, that perhaps there was still hope in this harsh frontier world. That perhaps they might survive after all. The sheriff's office was a small but sturdy building on Redemption Creek's Main Street. Inside, Sheriff James Hawkins, a grizzled man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, looked up from his desk as they entered. Nash, he acknowledged with a nod. I see you found Mrs. Whitfield. Just in time, Wyatt replied, setting Emma down gently on a wooden bench. The little girl had fallen asleep during the ride, her tear-stained face peaceful in slumber. Lawson and his gang, Sheriff Hawkins asked. Drove them off, but they'll be back, Wyatt said grimly. Mrs. Whitfield needs a safe place to stay and her arm needs tending. The sheriff nodded. Doc Peterson lives just down the street. I'll fetch him. He grabbed his hat and headed for the door, pausing to look back at Nora. You did the right thing reporting what you saw, Mrs. Whitfield. Brave thing, too. After he left, Wyatt guided Nora to a chair and gently examined her arm. The bleeding slowed, he observed, but we should clean it before the doctor arrives. He retrieved a canteen and a clean handkerchief, carefully rolling up her sleeve to reveal the wound. The bullet had torn through the flesh of her upper arm, leaving an angry red gash. This might sting, he warned before pouring water over the wound. Nora bit her lip to keep from crying out, not wanting to wake Emma. Wyatt worked with surprising gentleness for such large, calloused hands, cleaning away the blood and dirt with meticulous care. How did you know where to find us? Nora asked, needing conversation to distract from the pain. I've been tracking Lawson for weeks, Wyatt explained, his focus on her wound. When I heard gunshots in town, I knew they'd made their move. The church was the most logical place for someone to hide. You've been after them a long time. Something dark flickered across Wyatt's face. Lawson and his gang have left a trail of grief across 3 territories. It's personal now. Before Nora could ask what he meant, the door opened as Sheriff Hawkins returned with Dr. Peterson, a kind-faced man with spectacles and silver-streaked hair. The doctor examined Nora's arm with practiced efficiency. Clean shot through the flesh, he pronounced. Painful, but not dangerous if we prevent infection. He opened his medical bag and set to work, first cleaning the wound more thoroughly, then stitching it closed with neat, precise movements. Nora endured the procedure stoically, her eyes often drifting to Emma's sleeping form or to Wyatt, who stood by the window, watching the street with vigilant eyes. There we are, the doctor said finally, wrapping a clean bandage around her arm. Keep it dry and clean. Change the bandage daily. I'll check it again in a few days. Thank you, doctor, Nora said sincerely. After the doctor left, Sheriff Hawkins addressed the question of their safety. My deputy lives above the jailhouse. His quarters are small but secure. You can stay there tonight. What about tomorrow? Nora asked, the reality of their situation settling in. Our home isn't safe anymore. No, it isn't, Wyatt agreed, turning from the window. Not until Lawson is captured. I have a proposition, Sheriff Hawkins said after a moment's consideration. My sister owns a small ranch about 10 miles outside of town. She's been looking for help since her husband passed last year. It's remote enough to be safe, and few people know of its connection to me. Hope flickered in Nora's heart. I can cook, clean, sew whatever's needed. It's settled then, the sheriff nodded. Marshal Nash can escort you there tomorrow. Wyatt seemed about to protest, but then nodded in agreement. I'll need to continue tracking Lawson, but I can make sure Mrs. Whitfield and her daughter reach the ranch safely. Later that night, in the small but clean quarters above the jailhouse, Nora tucked Emma into the narrow bed. The little girl had barely stirred during the entire ordeal, exhaustion overcoming fear. Is the nice man with the star going to stay with us, Mama? Emma asked sleepily, surprising Nora, who had thought her daughter was already asleep. No, darling. He has important work to do, Nora replied, smoothing back Emma's golden curls. I like him. He's not scary like the other men. No, he's not, Nora agreed softly. Now sleep, little one. We have a journey tomorrow. After Emma drifted off again, Nora moved to the window, gazing out at the quiet town. From this vantage point, she could see Wyatt standing on the boardwalk below, his tall figure illuminated by lamplight as he conversed with Sheriff Hawkins. Something about his steady presence brought comfort, a feeling she hadn't expected to find again after Thomas died. The thought of her late husband brought a familiar ache to her heart. Thomas Whitfield had been a good man, kind, hardworking, devoted to her and Emma. Their 5 years together had been happy ones, despite the hardships of frontier life. His death during a bank robbery 8 months ago had shattered their world, leaving Nora to pick up the pieces and somehow create a new life for herself and their daughter. Now, they were forced to flee again. To start over yet again. The unfairness of it threatened to overwhelm her, but Nora pushed the feeling aside. Self-pity would not protect Emma. Strength would. With that thought firmly in mind, she turned from the window and prepared for bed, her wounded arm throbbing dully as a reminder of how close they had come to disaster, and how fortunate they were that Wyatt Nash had arrived when he did. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through the small window. Nora had slept fitfully, dreams filled with gunshots and shadowed figures, but Emma had slept peacefully through the night. They shared a simple breakfast provided by the sheriff's wife: fresh bread, preserves, and strong coffee for Nora, milk for Emma. By the time they descended to the jailhouse below, Wyatt was already there, speaking in low tones with Sheriff Hawkins. He looked up when they entered, offering a brief smile that transformed his serious face. Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield, Miss Emma, he greeted them. Are you ready to travel? Emma nodded shyly, half hiding behind her mother's skirts but peeking out at Wyatt with curious eyes. We don't have much to bring, Nora explained. Their flight to the church had been so sudden that they'd taken nothing with them. I took the liberty of gathering some necessities, Sheriff Hawkins said, indicating 2 cloth bundles on his desk. Clothes, some food for the journey. My wife insisted. That's very kind, Nora said, touched by the consideration. Please thank her for me. You can thank her yourself when you return to town, he replied with a nod. Once this business with Lawson is settled. Wyatt collected the bundles and led them outside where 3 horses waited his chestnut stallion, a gentle-looking bay mare and a smaller pony. The mare's for you, Mrs. Whitfield, he explained. The pony will carry your daughter. It's a calm old thing used to being led. Nora approached the mare cautiously. It's been some time since I've ridden. She's gentle, Wyatt assured her, offering a hand to help her mount. His touch was steady and respectful, gone almost as soon as it came. Emma was delighted with the pony, giggling as Wyatt lifted her onto its back and showed her how to hold the reins. Remember, Buttercup just follows along, he told her seriously. You don't need to steer. Buttercup, Emma repeated, patting the pony's mane. Hello, Buttercup. With Wyatt in the lead, Nora beside him, and Emma's pony tethered to Wyatt's horse, they set off from town just as the businesses were beginning to open for the day. Several townsfolk stopped to watch them go. curiosity evident in their expressions. "News travels fast in a small town," Wyatt commented as they left the buildings behind. "By noon, everyone will know you've left." "Will they know where we've gone?" Nora asked, concerned. "No, the sheriff is discreet and few people connect him with the Thornton Ranch. It should be safe." They rode at a steady pace, not rushing but making good time across the rugged landscape. The territory around Redemption Creek was a mix of rocky hills, scrubland, and occasional groves of trees along creek beds. Beautiful in its own harsh way, the land demanded respect and careful navigation. As they rode, Wyatt pointed out landmarks and signs of wildlife to Emma, who absorbed every word with wide-eyed fascination. Nora found herself watching their interaction, touched by the marshal's patience with her daughter's endless questions. "Were you always a marshal, Mr. Nash?" Nora asked during a quiet moment, curious about the man who had saved their lives. "No, madam," he replied, adjusting his hat against the strengthening sun. "Grew up on a cattle ranch in Texas. Joined the army during the war, though I was young then. Afterward, I drifted for a while, worked as a ranch hand, then a sheriff's deputy. Took the marshal's badge 5 years ago, and you've been chasing outlaws ever since." A shadow crossed his face. "Among other duties, the law needs enforcing out here where civilization is still taking root." "It seems a lonely life," Nora observed. Wyatt's eyes met hers briefly. "It can be, but it has its purpose." They stopped around midday to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of bread, dried meat, and apples from their provisions. Emma, having overcome her initial shyness, now chattered happily to Wyatt about her favorite things: her rag doll named Sarah, the cat that lived near their old home, the stories her mother told her at bedtime. Wyatt listened with genuine interest, occasionally asking questions that delighted the little girl with their seriousness. It was clear he wasn't merely humoring her, he actually cared what she had to say. "You're good with children," Nora remarked as they packed up to continue their journey. "Had 4 younger siblings," he explained with a small smile. "You learn patience quick that way." "Do you see them often?" The smile faded. "No, my parents and 2 sisters died of fever when I was 20. Brother was killed at Shiloh. Youngest sister married a farmer in Kansas. We write sometimes." "I'm sorry," Nora said softly, recognizing the familiar pain of loss in his brief words. Wyatt simply nodded, helping Emma back onto her pony. "We should reach the ranch by late afternoon if we keep a steady pace." The sun was indeed low in the western sky when they crested a hill and saw the Thornton Ranch spread out before them, a modest main house with a wide porch, a sturdy barn, corral, and several outbuildings, all nestled in a small valley with a creek running along one side. Fields of wheat and corn stretched behind the house, and cattle grazed on the hillsides beyond. "It's lovely," Nora said, feeling a spark of hope at the peaceful scene. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the setting sun. Martha Thornton was in her early 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, and a face that showed both hardship and kindness in equal measure. She greeted them warmly as they dismounted in the yard. "James sent word you might be coming," she said, helping Emma down from her pony. "You must be Mrs. Whitfield and little Emma. I'm Martha Thornton." "Thank you for taking us in," Nora said sincerely. "Nonsense. I've been needing help around the place, and you need somewhere safe." "Works out for both of us." She turned to Wyatt with a nod of recognition. "Marshal, will you be staying the night?" "If you have room, madam. I should head back at first light." "Always room for the law," Martha assured him, "especially when it wears such a handsome face." Wyatt actually blushed at this, making Emma giggle and Nora hide a smile. "Come inside," Martha continued. "Supper's nearly ready, and you all look like you could use a good meal and rest." The interior of the ranch house was modest but comfortable, with solid furniture, colorful quilts, and the lingering scent of baking bread. Martha showed Nora and Emma to a small bedroom at the back of the house. "It's not much," she apologized, "but it's clean and private." "It's perfect," Nora assured her, already feeling more at ease than she had in months. Supper was a hearty affair of venison stew, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Emma, initially shy with Martha, warmed to her quickly when the older woman produced a small wooden horse that had belonged to her son. "He's grown now with children of his own in California," Martha explained. "Writes every month. Says I should sell the ranch and join them, but this land is in my bones now." After the meal, with Emma contentedly playing in the corner, the adults discussed the situation more frankly. "Lawson's gang is dangerous," Wyatt explained to Martha. "They've killed before and won't hesitate to do so again if they find Mrs. Whitfield." "They won't find her here," Martha said firmly. "Few people even know James and I are related. We have different last names since I remarried, and we don't advertise the connection. Still, it would be best if Mrs. Whitfield and Emma stayed close to the house for now," Wyatt advised. "At least until we apprehend Lawson." "And how do you plan to do that?" Nora asked, the question that had been on her mind all day finally emerging. Wyatt's expression turned grim. "I've been tracking them for months. They've established a pattern. They'll likely head for Silver Creek next. There's a mine payroll due there in 2 weeks. I plan to be waiting." The thought of him facing the dangerous gang alone sent an unexpected chill through Nora. "Isn't that risky?" "Shouldn't you have more men?" "I've telegraphed for reinforcements," he acknowledged, "but they may not arrive in time. Lawson needs to be stopped before he hurts anyone else." There was something in his tone, a personal edge that went beyond professional duty. Nora wanted to ask more but sensed it wasn't the time. As the evening progressed, Emma eventually fell asleep in Nora's lap. Wyatt offered to carry her to bed, gently lifting the sleeping child and following Nora to their room. He laid Emma on the bed with surprising tenderness, making sure she was comfortable before stepping back. "Thank you," Nora said softly as they returned to the main room. "For everything. Just doing what's right, Mrs. Whitfield. Please call me Nora," she said impulsively. "After all we've been through, formality seems unnecessary." He hesitated, then nodded. "Nora, then, and I'm Wyatt to my friends. Are we friends, Marshal Nash?" she asked with a small smile. His eyes, deep blue in the lamplight, met her steadily. "I'd like to think so." The moment stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with something neither was ready to name. Martha's return from the kitchen broke the spell. "I've made up the spare room for you, Marshal," she announced. "It's small but has a decent bed." "That's more than I'm used to most nights," Wyatt assured her. "Thank you for your hospitality." Later, as Nora lay beside her sleeping daughter in the darkness, she found her thoughts returning to Wyatt Nash. There was something about him that spoke to her, a steadiness, a quiet strength that reminded her of Thomas yet was entirely different. The comparison brought guilt, but also confusion. It had been only 8 months since she'd lost her husband. How could she be thinking of another man? Yet as sleep finally claimed her, it was Wyatt's face she saw, those serious eyes softening as he spoke to Emma, the rare smile that transformed his weathered features, the gentle hands that had tended her wound with such care. Morning arrived with the sounds of a working ranch roosters crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, the clatter of pots from the kitchen. Nora dressed quickly and helped a sleepy Emma do the same before joining Martha and Wyatt for breakfast. Wyatt was already dressed for travel, his marshal's badge pinned to his vest and his gun belt secured around his waist. He nodded a greeting as they entered, his eyes lingering on Nora for a moment before returning to his coffee. "Will you be leaving right after breakfast?" Martha asked him, serving up plates of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. "Yes, madam. I need to report back to Sheriff Hawkins, then continue tracking Lawson." Emma looked up from her food with a frown. "You're going away. I have to catch the bad men, little one," Wyatt explained gently. "To keep you and your mama safe." "But who will keep you safe?" Emma asked with a child's perfect logic. Wyatt seemed momentarily at a loss for words, touched by the question. "I'll be careful," he promised. "I've been doing this a long time." After breakfast, Wyatt prepared to depart. Martha discreetly busied herself in the kitchen, taking Emma with her to help knead bread dough, leaving Nora and Wyatt alone on the front porch. "Martha will look after you well," Wyatt said, adjusting his horse's saddle. "She's a good woman, tough as they come." "How long do you think it will be?" Nora asked. "Before Lawson is caught, hard to say. Could be weeks, could be longer." He turned to face her fully. "You'll be safe here in the meantime." Nora nodded, struggling with emotions she couldn't quite name. Please be careful, Wyatt. Emma's right, someone needs to keep you safe too. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or something deeper. I've always been careful, Nora, but now, he paused, seeming to weigh his words. Now I have a reason to be even more so. Before she could respond, Emma burst out of the house, running to Wyatt and wrapping her arms around his legs in a fierce hug. Come back soon, Marshal Wyatt, she demanded, looking up at him with solemn eyes. Wyatt knelt down to her level, his expression gentle. I'll do my best, Miss Emma. You take care of your mama while I'm gone, all right, Emma nodded seriously, accepting this important mission. Wyatt rose, tipped his hat to Nora, and mounted his horse in one fluid motion. With a final nod, he turned the chestnut stallion and rode away, his straight-backed figure gradually diminishing as he followed the trail back toward town. Nora watched until he disappeared from sight, Emma's small hand clutched in hers, wondering why his departure left such an emptiness in its wake. The days at the Thornton Ranch fell into a comfortable rhythm. Nora helped Martha with household tasks, cooking, cleaning, mending, while also learning about the running of the ranch. Emma delighted in the freedom of country living, especially when Martha introduced her to the chickens and a new litter of kittens in the barn. Martha proved to be not just a gracious hostess but a friend. In the evenings after Emma was asleep, the two women often sat by the fire, talking about their lives, their losses, their hopes. My James was a good man, Martha said one night, her hands busy with knitting as she spoke of her late husband. 15 years we had together, not enough, but I'm grateful for every one of them. That's how I feel about Thomas, Nora admitted. We had 5 years. He never even got to see Emma start school. And your family, are they not in the picture? Nora shook her head. My parents died when I was 16. I was working as a school teacher when I met Thomas. We married quickly, perhaps too quickly, some said, but we were happy. And now? What do you want for your future? It was a question Nora had avoided asking herself. Safety for Emma, a home. She hesitated, then added softly, not to be alone forever. Martha's knowing eyes studied her over the rim of her spectacles. You're young yet, Nora. Just 25, if I recall what James told me. There's time for another chapter in your story. Nora's thoughts drifted to Wyatt, as they often did in quiet moments. 2 weeks had passed since he'd left, with no word. She told herself her concern was merely gratitude for his help, nothing more. Perhaps, she replied non-committally. But that's for the future. For now, I'm thankful for this sanctuary. The weeks stretched into a month. Nora's arm healed completely, leaving only a thin scar as a reminder of that terrifying night. Her skills as a former schoolteacher proved useful when Martha mentioned that several neighboring ranch families had children with little access to education. You could start a small school right here, Martha suggested one morning over breakfast. The MacPherson children, the Reeves boys, the Johnson girls, that's 7 students already, plus Emma when she's old enough. The idea took root and blossomed. One of the outbuildings, a former bunkhouse when the ranch had more hands, was cleaned and converted into a simple schoolroom. Word spread, and soon Nora found herself teaching 8 children of various ages 3 days a week. The work was fulfilling, giving her a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. Emma thrived in the ranch environment, her nightmares about the bad men gradually fading as she formed a special bond with Martha and delighted in the presence of other children. Still, Nora found herself watching the trail from town, hoping for a rider bringing news, or better yet, Wyatt himself returning with word that Lawson had been captured and the danger was past. It was nearly 6 weeks after their arrival when a rider finally appeared, but it wasn't Wyatt. Sheriff Hawkins himself rode into the yard one afternoon just as Nora was dismissing her students for the day. The sight of him alone sent a chill through her. After ensuring the children were safely on their way home with their parents, she approached the sheriff, trying to keep her expression calm. Sheriff Hawkins, this is unexpected. He removed his hat, his weathered face grave. Mrs. Whitfield, is my sister around? In the house, Nora replied, her heart beginning to race. Is something wrong? Is it Marshal Nash? The sheriff hesitated, confirming her fears before he even spoke. He was ambushed 3 days ago near Silver Creek. Lawson and his gang. Nora felt the blood drain from her face. Is he? He's alive, the sheriff assured her quickly. But badly wounded. Doc Peterson's been tending him at my office. Didn't want to risk moving him to the doctor's place in case Lawson's men came looking to finish the job. Relief and fear warred within her. How bad is it? Took a bullet to the shoulder, another grazed his head, lost a lot of blood. He's been in and out of consciousness. Sheriff Hawkins looked uncomfortable. Thing is, Mrs. Whitfield, when he is conscious, he asks for you. The words hung in the air between them, freighted with meaning neither was prepared to address directly. I should go to him, Nora said, the decision forming even as she spoke the words. That's why I'm here, the sheriff nodded. Doc thinks seeing you might help, but it's not without risk. Lawson's still out there, and now he knows Wyatt's vulnerable. I'll go pack some things, Nora said, already turning toward the house, and speak with Martha about Emma. Within the hour, arrangements had been made. Emma would stay safely at the ranch with Martha, while Nora would return to town with the sheriff. The little girl cried at being separated from her mother, but Martha's promise of special baking projects and caring for the new kittens eventually won her over. I'll be back soon, darling, Nora promised, holding Emma tightly. You be good for Mrs. Thornton. Is Marshal Wyatt going to be okay? Emma asked, her small face serious. I hope so, sweetheart. I'm going to help make him better. The ride to town was tense and swift, Sheriff Hawkins setting a pace that suggested urgency. They took a circuitous route, avoiding the main trails where ambush would be easier, and reached Redemption Creek as dusk was falling. The sheriff led her directly to his office, where Deputy Morgan met them at the door with a relieved expression. Any change? Sheriff Hawkins asked him. Fever's holding steady, the deputy reported. Doc's with him now. The sheriff nodded, then turned to Nora. He's in the back room. It's not much, but it's the safest place in town right now. Nora followed him through the office to a small room beyond. The sight that greeted her made her breath catch painfully. Wyatt lay on a narrow bed, his normally tan face pale beneath a sheen of sweat. A bandage wrapped around his head and another bulked beneath the nightshirt he wore. His breathing was shallow but steady. Dr. Peterson looked up from checking Wyatt's pulse, surprise flickering across his face. Mrs. Whitfield, I didn't expect to see you here. The sheriff brought me, she explained, moving to Wyatt's bedside. How is he? Fighting, the doctor said simply. The head wound isn't deep, but it caused a concussion. The shoulder wound is more concerning. The bullet went clean through, but infection set in. I've done what I can with carbolic and regular cleaning, but the fever needs to break soon. Nora looked down at Wyatt's still form, his strong features now vulnerable in unconsciousness. An unexpected surge of tenderness washed through her, along with determination. I've nursed fevers before, she said with quiet confidence. My husband contracted pneumonia 2 winters ago. I know what to do. The doctor seemed relieved. Another pair of hands would be welcome. I have other patients to attend to, and the sheriff and his deputy can't be here constantly. I'll stay with him, Nora promised, removing her bonnet and placing it on a nearby chair. The doctor gave her instructions on changing the bandages, administering the willow bark tea for fever, and what signs to watch for that might indicate worsening condition. Sheriff Hawkins arranged for a cot to be brought in so she could rest without leaving Wyatt's side. When they had gone, Nora pulled a chair close to the bed and gently took Wyatt's hand in hers. His skin was hot with fever, but his fingers instinctively curled around hers. I'm here now, she said softly, though she wasn't sure he could hear. You saved us, Wyatt. Now let me help save you. Through the night, Nora tended him faithfully, bathing his face and chest with cool cloths, helping him sip water or willow bark tea during his brief moments of consciousness, changing the bandages on his wounds with gentle hands. In those fleeting moments when his eyes opened, there was little recognition, just confusion and pain before he slipped away again. Dawn was breaking when the fever seemed to intensify. Wyatt began to mutter, sometimes thrashing weakly against unseen threats. Nora held his hands, speaking soothingly, trying to anchor him. Lawson, he muttered, his head turning restlessly on the pillow. Found them? No, Sarah, no. Esachich, Nora soothed, wiping his brow with a cool cloth. You're safe, Wyatt. Rest now. His eyes flew open suddenly, startlingly blue against his flushed face, but looking at something or someone only he could see. "Couldn't save them," he said with terrible clarity. "My fault. All my fault." The raw pain in his voice brought tears to Nora's eyes. "No, Wyatt," she whispered, though she didn't know what tragedy he was reliving. "It wasn't your fault." His gaze shifted, focusing on her face with sudden recognition. "Nora," he whispered. "Yes," she smiled through her tears. "I'm here." His free hand reached up weakly to touch her cheek, as if confirming she was real. "Thought I dreamed you." "No dream," she assured him, covering his hand with hers. "I came as soon as I heard you were hurt." Emma, safe with Martha at the ranch. Relief washed over his features before pain clouded them again. "Lawson, got away. Don't worry about that now," Nora urged. "Just focus on getting well. Need to tell you." He began, struggling to stay conscious. "Why, it's personal, Lawson, but the effort was too much." His eyes fluttered closed again, his hand going limp in hers. For a terrifying moment, Nora thought the worst, but the steady rise and fall of his chest reassured her. Exhausted from her night's vigil, she rested her head on the edge of the bed, still holding his hand, and drifted into an uneasy sleep. She awoke to the sensation of fingers gently stroking her hair. Opening her eyes, she found Wyatt watching her, his gaze clearer than it had been all night. "You stayed," he said softly, his voice rough but stronger. Nora sat up, immediately alert. "Your fever, it's broken," she pressed a hand to his forehead, confirming what his lucid eyes already told her. The dangerous heat had subsided, leaving him weak but more present. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Since yesterday evening. The sheriff came for me." She poured fresh water from the pitcher beside the bed and helped him drink. "How do you feel?" "Like I was trampled by a herd of buffalo," he admitted with a weak attempt at a smile. "But I'll live thanks to you." "Thanks to Dr. Peterson," she corrected. "I just helped." Wyatt's eyes held hers. "You did more than that. I heard your voice in the darkness. It guided me back." The simple statement, delivered with such sincerity, touched something deep within Nora. Before she could respond, the door opened as Dr. Peterson entered for his morning check. The doctor was pleased with Wyatt's improvement, declaring the crisis past though recovery would still take time. "The fever breaking is an excellent sign," he told them. "But you're not out of the woods yet, Marshal. That shoulder needs time to heal properly, and you're weak from blood loss and fever." "How long?" Wyatt asked, his frustration evident. "At least 2 weeks before you should even think of getting back in the saddle," the doctor said firmly. "And that's being optimistic." After the doctor left, Wyatt's expression darkened. 2 weeks. Lawson could be in Mexico by then. Or you could rush your recovery, reopen that wound, and die of infection, Nora countered, surprising herself with her vehemence. "Is catching him worth your life?" The question hung between them, charged with meaning beyond the immediate situation. "There's something you should know," Wyatt said after a long moment, "about why tracking Lawson is so important to me." Nora settled back in her chair, sensing this was what he had tried to tell her during his fever. "I'm listening." Wyatt's eyes took on a distant look, focusing on painful memories. 3 years ago, I was escorting a witness to testify against Lawson's gang for a stagecoach robbery. Sarah Miller, a young widow who'd seen the robbery and could identify the men involved. He paused, drawing a careful breath that still pained his injured shoulder. "We were ambushed. I took a bullet in the leg, but managed to get Mrs. Miller to what I thought was safety, a small cabin off the main trail. I left her there with my backup pistol while I led the pursuers away." The hollow look in his eyes told Nora what was coming before he said it. "When I circled back hours later, Lawson had found her. She was." He swallowed hard. "She didn't suffer long," the doctor said, "but that was small comfort. She had a 5-year-old son waiting for her back home." "Oh, Wyatt," Nora whispered, understanding now the burden he carried. "I'm so sorry." "I failed her," he said simply. "I promised to protect her, and I failed. When I heard about you witnessing the stagecoach robbery, about you being a widow with a young child, it was like history repeating itself. I couldn't let it happen again." Nora reached for his hand, holding it firmly. "You didn't fail this time, Wyatt. Emma and I are safe because of you. But Lawson's still out there," he reminded her. "And now he knows I'm tracking him. He'll be more careful, more dangerous." "We'll find another way," Nora insisted, but first you need to heal." The determination in her voice brought a faint smile to his lips. "Yes, madam." The next few days established a new routine. Nora continued to care for Wyatt, whose strength gradually returned though he remained confined to bed on doctor's orders. Sheriff Hawkins arranged for her to stay in the small room above the jailhouse, though she spent most of her waking hours with Wyatt. They talked for hours about their pasts, their dreams, the books they'd read, the places they'd seen. Nora told him about her childhood in Ohio, her years as a schoolteacher, her marriage to Thomas. Wyatt shared stories of his youth in Texas, his time in the Army, his decision to pursue a career in law enforcement. "Did you ever think of settling down?" Nora asked one afternoon as she changed the bandage on his shoulder, revealing the angry red wound that was slowly healing. Wyatt winced slightly at the pressure but held still. "Once, maybe. There was a girl back in Texas before the war, but when I came back, she'd married someone else. After that, the badge became my life. And now," the question slipped out before she could reconsider it. His eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. "Now I'm not so sure that's enough anymore." The moment was interrupted by Sheriff Hawkins entering with news a telegram had arrived from the Territorial Marshal's office. Reinforcements were being sent to help track Lawson, expected to arrive within the week. "They're sending Marshal Cooper and 2 deputies," the sheriff informed them. "Cooper's got a reputation for bringing in outlaws alive to stand trial." "I know Cooper," Wyatt nodded. "Good man, thorough." "This means you can focus on healing," Nora pointed out, relief evident in her voice. Wyatt didn't look entirely convinced but nodded anyway. "I'll brief Cooper when he arrives. Lawson's likely headed for the border, but he's been known to hole up in the Diablo Mountains when things get hot." As Wyatt's recovery progressed, Nora began to think about the future. Emma was safe at the ranch, but she missed her daughter terribly. Yet the thought of returning to the ranch while Wyatt remained in town was equally painful. Her confusion must have shown on her face one evening as she sat by his bedside, lost in thought. "What's troubling you?" Wyatt asked gently. "I was thinking about Emma," Nora admitted. "I miss her, but—" "But you're worried about leaving town while Lawson's still at large," Wyatt finished for her. "Partly that," she acknowledged. "And partly—" She hesitated, uncertain how to express the other reason that leaving him had become unthinkable. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Nora," he said softly, reaching for her hand. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past days." Her heart quickened at his tone. About what happens after Lawson is caught, about what I want for my future." His hand tightened around hers. "About who I want in that future." Before he could continue, a commotion from the main office interrupted them. Loud voices, the sound of boots on floorboards. Sheriff Hawkins appeared at the door, his expression urgent. "Ryder just came in from the South Road," he announced. "Says Lawson and his gang were spotted heading this way. They'll be here by nightfall." The news hit like a physical blow. Wyatt immediately tried to sit up straighter, grimacing at the pain the sudden movement caused. "How many?" he demanded. 5 men, according to the report. "Cooper, still at least 2 days out," the sheriff confirmed grimly. Wyatt's jaw set in determination. "We need to prepare the town. Hawkins, gather every man who can handle a gun. Morgan, secure the bank and stagecoach office. Those will be likely targets." "What about Mrs. Whitfield?" the sheriff asked. "If Lawson knows she's here." "She needs to leave town," Wyatt said firmly. "Immediately." "No," Nora protested. "I won't run again." "Nora, please," Wyatt's voice held an edge of desperation. "I can't protect you like this." "Then I'll protect myself," she insisted. "I won't leave you when you're still recovering." The standoff between them was broken by Deputy Morgan rushing in with fresh news. "Sheriff, telegraph from Sweetwater Marshal Cooper intercepted 3 of Lawson's men trying to rob the bank there yesterday. They're in custody." 3, Sheriff Hawkins frowned. "Then who's coming here?" "Could be the report was wrong," the deputy suggested. Wyatt shook his head. "Or it could be just Lawson and 1 other man coming specifically for revenge. Either way, we need to be ready." Despite Wyatt's continued protests, Nora refused to leave town. Instead, she helped the sheriff's wife organize the women of Redemption Creek to prepare bandages and gather supplies in case of injury. The men fortified the main street. positioning sharpshooters on rooftops, and evacuating the more vulnerable citizens to the church at the edge of town. By late afternoon, an eerie quiet had settled over Redemption Creek. Wyatt, against doctor's orders but with no one willing to physically restrain him, had dressed in his clothes and strapped on his gun belt. He sat in a chair by the window of the sheriff's office, pale but alert, his rifle across his lap. "You should be in bed," Nora chided gently as she brought him coffee. "I'll rest when Lawson's caught her dead," he replied, though his drawn face showed the toll his effort was taking. The sun was setting when the lookout posted at the edge of town gave the alarm 2 riders approaching from the south road, moving at a steady pace. Sheriff Hawkins stepped out onto the boardwalk, signaling to the men positioned along the street. Wyatt insisted on joining him, leaning heavily on Nora's arm as they emerged from the office. The riders came into view as they entered the Main Street Frank Lawson, recognizable by his distinctive black coat and red bandana, and a younger man Nora didn't recognize. They rode directly to the center of town and stopped, seemingly unconcerned by the armed men visible on every side. "Afternoon, Sheriff," Lawson called out, his voice carrying easily in the tense silence. "Quite a welcome committee you've assembled." "Frank Lawson," Sheriff Hawkins replied evenly, his hand resting on his holstered pistol. "You're wanted for murder, robbery, and a dozen other crimes across 3 territories. "So they tell me," Lawson nodded, almost amiable, "but I'm not here for a social call. I've come for the marshal and the widow." Wyatt stepped forward, shrugging off Nora's supporting arm to stand straight despite the pain it clearly caused him. "I'm right here, Lawson," he called, "but Mrs. Whitfield is no concern of yours." Lawson's cold eyes fixed on Wyatt, a smile spreading across his weather-beaten face. Well, Marshal Nash, heard I nearly put you in the ground last week, came to finish the job." "You're welcome to try," Wyatt replied steadily, "but you won't leave this town alive if you do." Nora stepped up beside Wyatt, ignoring his attempt to push her back. "And I'm here too, Mr. Lawson, the witness you've been trying to silence." Lawson studied her with narrowed eyes. Brave woman, foolish but brave. His gaze shifted to the young man beside him. "Isn't she something, Jimmy? Reminds me of your mother." The young man, barely more than a boy, really stiffened in his saddle. His resemblance to Lawson was striking, marking him clearly as the outlaw's son. "You said we'd just scare them," Jimmy said, his voice uncertain. "You didn't say anything about killing a woman." "Plans change, boy," Lawson replied dismissively. "Sometimes examples need to be made." "No, Pa," Jimmy shook his head, something resolute settling over his young features. "This ain't right, it never was." With surprising speed, Jimmy drew his pistol, not aiming at Wyatt or Nora, but at his father. "It's over, Pa, I won't let you hurt anyone else." Lawson's expression contorted with rage. "You ungrateful," he never finished the sentence. In one fluid motion, he drew his own weapon and fired at his son. Jimmy jerked in the saddle, shock registering on his face as the bullet struck him in the chest. His own gun discharged as he fell, the shot going wild. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Lawson turned his gun toward Nora, hatred blazing in his eyes. Wyatt lunged forward, pushing her aside as he drew his own weapon. Sheriff Hawkins and his men fired from multiple positions. Lawson got off one shot before being hit multiple times, the impact throwing him from his horse. When the echoes of gunfire faded, Lawson lay motionless in the dirt street. His son Jimmy was slumped over his saddle, blood staining his shirt, but still breathing. "Wyatt," Nora cried, turning to find the marshal on his knees, clutching his already wounded shoulder. Fresh blood seeped between his fingers. "Just grazed me," he managed through gritted teeth, though the pallor of his face suggested otherwise. Dr. Peterson rushed forward from where he had been waiting in the mercantile, ordering men to carry both Wyatt and young Jimmy to his office immediately. Nora followed, her heart pounding with fear that the bullet might have done more damage than Wyatt admitted. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Jimmy Lawson, despite his serious wound, was expected to survive. Wyatt's injury proved to be indeed just a graze, though it had reopened part of his previous wound and required fresh stitches. Frank Lawson was buried in the town cemetery the following day, his funeral attended only by the undertaker and Sheriff Hawkins as a matter of official duty. Marshal Cooper and his deputies arrived a day later, taking statements from all involved and formally placing Jimmy Lawson under arrest, though with consideration for his actions in turning against his father. Boy might face a reduced sentence, Cooper told Wyatt as they sat in the sheriff's office. Judge Hollister's been known to show leniency in cases where a criminal turns on his associates, especially family. He's young, Wyatt agreed, made the right choice in the end. Cooper studied his colleague with knowing eyes. And what about you, Nash? What choices are you making now? Wyatt's gaze drifted to where Nora stood outside, talking with the sheriff's wife. Different ones than I expected. 3 days after Lawson's death, with the town returning to normal and Wyatt's recovery once again progressing well, Nora prepared to return to the Thornton Ranch to reunite with Emma. The stagecoach was scheduled to depart at noon, giving her just enough time to say her goodbyes. She found Wyatt sitting on the porch behind the sheriff's office, his face tilted toward the morning sun. He looked up as she approached, a smile warming his features. "All packed?" he asked, noting the small valise in her hand. "Yes," she nodded, setting it down to join him on the bench. "Emma will be overjoyed to see me. Martha says she asks about me every day. And about me too, I hear," Wyatt added with a touch of pride. "Constantly," Nora confirmed with a smile. "She's quite taken with her Marshal Wyatt." A comfortable silence fell between them, both aware that something important remained unsaid. "What will you do now?" Nora finally asked. With Lawson gone, Wyatt considered the question. "Cooper's offered me a position at the territorial office in Santa Fe. More administrative, less time in the saddle." "That sounds safer," Nora observed, trying to keep disappointment from her voice. Santa Fe was far from Redemption Creek, far from the Thornton Ranch. "It would be," he agreed, "but I've been thinking about a different direction entirely." Nora looked at him questioningly. "Sheriff Hawkins is looking to retire next year," Wyatt explained. "He suggested I might consider running for his position, said the town could use a lawman who already knows the territory." Hope fluttered in Nora's chest. "You'd stay in Redemption Creek." "I might," Wyatt turned to face her fully, "if I had a good enough reason." The meaning behind his words was unmistakable. Nora felt a blush rise to her cheeks but met his gaze steadily. And what would constitute a good enough reason, Marshal Nash? Wyatt reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "Nora, these past weeks have shown me something I'd forgotten, that life is meant to be shared. When I was lying wounded, thinking I might die, it wasn't regret about not catching Lawson that troubled me most. It was regret about all the things I hadn't said to you." Nora's heart quickened. "What things?" "That from the moment I found you in that church tower, something changed in me," he said softly. "That watching you with Emma makes me want a family of my own. That I've fallen in love with you, Nora Whitfield, and if you'll give me time to prove myself worthy, I'd like to court you properly." Tears welled in Nora's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Wyatt Nash, I believe you've already proven yourself worthy a dozen times over. Is that a yes?" he asked, hope brightening his blue eyes. "It's a yes," she confirmed, squeezing his hand. "Though Emma will have to approve, of course." Wyatt's smile was radiant. "I'll do my best to win her over. I've been practicing my horse stories." "She already adores you," Nora assured him. "As do I." With tender care for his healing shoulder, Wyatt drew her closer, his free hand gently cupping her cheek. "May I kiss you, Mrs. Whitfield?" "I wish you would, Marshal Nash," she whispered. Their first kiss was gentle, a promise of deeper passion to come when wounds had fully healed, both the physical ones and those invisible scars they both carried from past losses. When they parted, Nora rested her forehead against his, savoring the moment. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "The stage leaves soon." "I'll follow as soon as Dr. Peterson clears me for travel," Wyatt promised. "A few more days at most. We'll be waiting," Nora assured him, rising from the bench. Wyatt insisted on walking her to the stagecoach, his arm linked with hers as they made their way slowly down the main street. Several townspeople nodded greetings, smiling at the pair with knowing looks that suggested town gossip had already connected the widow and the marshal. At the stagecoach, Wyatt helped her aboard, holding her hand a moment longer than necessary. "Give Emma my best," he said. "Tell her I'll bring her a surprise when I come." "She'll hold you to that," Nora warned with a smile. As the stagecoach pulled away, Nora watched Wyatt through the window, his tall figure standing straight and proud despite his injury, his hand raised in farewell. Her heart felt lighter than it had in months, filled with hope for the future, a future that now included a man she had never expected to find, in circumstances she could never have imagined. The journey to the Thornton Ranch passed quickly, Nora's thoughts occupied with plans and possibilities. Martha greeted her arrival with a warm embrace, while Emma launched herself into her mother's arms with a squeal of delight. "Mama, you're back. Did you make Marshal Wyatt all better?" Nora hugged her daughter tightly. "I helped, sweetheart, and guess what? He's coming to visit us in a few days." Emma's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? Will he stay a long time?" "We'll see," Nora replied, exchanging a meaningful glance with Martha, who smiled knowingly. That evening, after Emma was tucked in bed with promises of Marshal Wyatt's imminent arrival to dream about, Nora and Martha sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Arizona sky. "So," Martha said casually, "James wrote that there might be wedding bells in Redemption Creek's future." Nora laughed softly. "News travels fast." "It's a small territory," Martha shrugged, "and my brother has always been observant." "Wyatt has asked to court me properly," Nora confirmed, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. "Court you? My dear, that man is head over heels in love with you. Has been since he first mentioned you in his letters to James months ago." This was news to Nora. "He wrote about me, asked James to keep an eye on you after your husband passed." Martha nodded. "Said you showed remarkable courage during a difficult time." "I think he admired you long before he admitted it to himself." The thought warmed Nora's heart even further. "I never expected to find love again," she admitted. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over." "Life has a way of surprising us," Martha observed, patting Nora's hand. "Sometimes with sorrow, sometimes with joy. The trick is to be open to both." 4 days later, Wyatt arrived at the Thornton Ranch, riding his chestnut stallion at a careful pace that respected his still-healing wound. Emma spotted him first from where she was helping Nora hang laundry on the line. "Marshal Wyatt," she shouted, dropping the wet sheet she was holding and racing across the yard to meet him. Wyatt dismounted with only a slight wince, kneeling to receive Emma's enthusiastic hug. "Hello, Miss Emma," he greeted her, his voice warm with genuine affection. "Have you been taking good care of your mama like I asked?" "Yes, sir," Emma nodded seriously. "And Mrs. Thornton taught me to feed the chickens and collect eggs all by myself." "That's quite impressive," Wyatt acknowledged, standing as Nora approached. The look that passed between them was filled with unspoken emotion. "Welcome to the Thornton Ranch, Marshal Nash," Nora said, suddenly shy despite everything they had shared. "Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's good to be here." "Did you bring me a surprise?" Emma interrupted, looking expectantly at Wyatt's saddlebags. Wyatt laughed, the sound rich and unrestrained in a way Nora had rarely heard from him. "As a matter of fact, I did." He reached into one of the bags and produced a small package wrapped in brown paper. Emma unwrapped it eagerly to reveal a beautifully carved wooden horse, detailed right down to the flowing mane and tail. "It's just like Buttercup," she gasped, recognizing the likeness to the pony she had ridden. "I thought you might like a reminder of your brave journey," Wyatt explained. "Thank you." Emma hugged him again, then ran off to show her new treasure to Martha, who was watching from the porch with an indulgent smile. Left alone, Nora and Wyatt regarded each other with all the feelings that had grown between them over the past weeks. "How's your shoulder?" Nora asked, noting how he still held it carefully. "Healing well," he assured her. "Dr. Peterson says I'm fit for light duty, which apparently includes courting beautiful widows." Nora's cheeks warmed at his directness. "Is that your official purpose here, Marshal?" "One of them," he nodded, stepping closer. "I also came to tell you that I've accepted Sheriff Hawkins' proposal. I'll be running for sheriff next spring with his endorsement." Joy bloomed in Nora's heart. "So you're staying in Redemption Creek?" "I am," he confirmed. "If that meets with your approval, "It does," she said softly, "very much so." Wyatt took her hand, his expression turning serious. "Nora, I know it's soon. I know you might need more time, but I want you to know my intentions. I love you. I love Emma. I want to build a life with you both, if you'll have me." Nora's free hand moved to his cheek, feeling the stubble beneath her palm. "It is soon," she agreed, "but sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even when the mind counsels caution. And what does your heart say?" Wyatt asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That life is precious and short. That love, when it comes, should be embraced." She smiled up at him, all doubts vanishing in the warmth of his gaze. "That I love you too, Wyatt Nash, and I would be honored to build a life with you." His answering smile was brilliant. With gentle reverence, he lowered his head to kiss her, their second kiss deeper and more certain than the first. When they parted, both were breathless. "I should speak with Emma," Wyatt said. "Make sure she understands and approves." Nora nodded, touched by his consideration for her daughter's feelings. "She adores you already, but yes, we should explain things to her together." They found Emma on the porch with Martha, proudly showing off every detail of her wooden horse. The little girl looked up as they approached, her perceptive eyes noting their clasped hands. "Emma, sweetheart," Nora began, sitting beside her daughter. "Marshal Wyatt and I would like to talk to you about something important." Emma looked between them, suddenly solemn. "Are the bad men coming back?" "No, darling," Nora assured her quickly. "The bad men are gone for good. This is about something happy." Wyatt knelt in front of Emma, his expression earnest. "Miss Emma, I care very much for your mother and for you too. I was hoping, with your permission, that I might become part of your family someday." Emma's brow furrowed in concentration as she processed this. "Would you live with us all the time?" "I would," Wyatt nodded. "I would be like a father to you if that's something you might want." Emma considered this carefully. "Would I call you Papa?" The question, so innocent yet so profound, brought tears to Nora's eyes. Wyatt's voice was husky with emotion when he answered. "If you wanted to, yes, but only when you're ready. You can call me Wyatt until then." Emma nodded, apparently satisfied with this arrangement. "Will you teach me to ride a real horse, not just a pony?" Wyatt laughed, relief evident in his expression. "When you're a bit older, absolutely." "Then it's okay with me," Emma declared with the simple acceptance of childhood. She looked at her mother. "Is Marshal Wyatt going to be my new papa soon?" Nora exchanged a glance with Wyatt. "Not right away, sweetheart. We'll need some time to get to know each other better first, but someday, yes." This seemed to satisfy Emma, who returned her attention to her wooden horse, the adult concerns already sliding from her mind in the way of children. Martha, who had witnessed the exchange with quiet approval, stood and brushed off her apron. "I believe this calls for a special supper," she announced. "Wyatt, you'll stay, of course." "I'd be honored, Mrs. Thornton," he replied with a warm smile. "Martha, please," she corrected him. "We're practically family now." The weeks that followed established a new pattern for their lives. Wyatt divided his time between his duties in Redemption Creek and visits to the Thornton Ranch. Nora continued teaching at the small school she had established, while making plans for their future together. They agreed to a proper courtship of 6 months, both out of respect for Nora's widowhood and to give Emma time to adjust to the idea of a new father. Wyatt proved himself wonderfully patient, never rushing Nora or pressuring Emma for affection, yet steadily becoming an essential part of their lives. By the time autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, Wyatt had purchased a small but comfortable house at the edge of Redemption Creek, close enough to town for his duties as future sheriff, yet with enough land for Emma to play and perhaps for them to keep a few animals. "It needs some work," he admitted as he showed it to Nora and Emma for the first time, "but it has good bones and plenty of room to grow." Nora walked through the empty rooms, envisioning their future life together, Emma playing by the large fireplace, family meals at a table not yet purchased, quiet evenings on the wide front porch. It was everything she had thought lost when Thomas died. "It's perfect," she told Wyatt, her eyes shining with happy tears. As winter approached, Wyatt officially moved into the sheriff's office as deputy, learning the day-to-day responsibilities of the position he would soon hold. Nora and Emma remained at the Thornton Ranch, where they had come to feel truly at home, though they visited town often. It was during one such visit, with Christmas just 2 weeks away, that Wyatt surprised them both. He had invited them to dinner at the hotel restaurant, a special treat that had Emma bouncing with excitement in her new dress. After the meal, as they sat enjoying apple pie, Wyatt cleared his throat nervously. "Nora, Emma," he began, reaching into his pocket. "I know we agreed to wait until spring, but my heart can't seem to follow that schedule." He produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a modest but beautiful diamond. Emma gasped in delight, while Nora's hand flew to her mouth in surprise. "Nora Whitfield," Wyatt said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "These past months have been the happiest of my life. You and Emma have brought joy and purpose to my days in ways I never thought possible. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of happiness spilled down Nora's cheeks as she nodded, too overcome for words at first. "Yes," she finally managed. "With all my heart, yes." Wyatt slipped the ring onto her finger, its weight unfamiliar yet somehow right. Emma clapped her hands in excitement. "Are you my papa now?" She asked Wyatt, her eyes bright with hope. Wyatt smiled at her tenderly. "Almost, little one, after the wedding." "When will that be?" Emma pressed, practical as always. Wyatt looked to Nora, leaving the decision to her. "How about Christmas Eve?" She suggested, the idea forming even as she spoke it. "A small ceremony with just our closest friends, then we can start the new year together in our new home." "Christmas Eve," Wyatt repeated, his smile radiant. "Perfect." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Redemption Creek, met with universal approval. The women of the town immediately began planning, offering to help with everything from Nora's dress to the wedding supper. Martha insisted on hosting the ceremony at the ranch, where Nora and Emma had found sanctuary in their time of need. The days leading up to Christmas Eve passed in a flurry of preparations. Nora's dress, a lovely creation of ivory silk with lace trim, was a gift from the ladies of her small school, who had pooled their resources and talents to create something special for the teacher who had brought education to their children. Emma was to be her mother's only attendant, proudly carrying a small bouquet of winter greens and ribbon. Sheriff Hawkins would stand with Wyatt, and the ceremony would be performed by Reverend Collins from the church in town, the same church where Wyatt had found Nora and Emma that fateful night. When Christmas Eve finally arrived, the Thornton Ranch was transformed. The main room had been cleared of everyday furniture and decorated with evergreen boughs, red ribbons, and dozens of candles. A small group of guests, no more than 20 in all, gathered to witness the union. Upstairs, Martha helped Nora with the final touches of her ensemble, securing the simple veil, arranging the fall of her dark hair, pinning a sprig of holly to her bodice. "You look beautiful, my dear," Martha said, her eyes misty with maternal affection. "Radiant." "I feel radiant," Nora admitted. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again." Emma twirled in her new green dress, her golden curls tied back with matching ribbon. "Is it time yet, Mama? Can we go downstairs now?" "Almost, sweetheart," Nora laughed, her daughter's excitement infectious. "Remember what you're supposed to do." "Walk in front of you real slow," Emma recited, "and stand still during the talking parts." "Perfect," Nora nodded, adjusting Emma's ribbon one last time. A soft knock at the door announced Sheriff Hawkins, who had offered to escort Nora downstairs in place of a father. "They're ready for you, ladies," he said, his usually gruff voice softened by the occasion. The small procession made its way down the stairs, Emma first, carefully stepping as she had been shown, followed by Nora on Sheriff Hawkins' arm, with Martha bringing up the rear. As they entered the main room, the assembled guests rose from their seats, but Nora had eyes only for Wyatt. He stood before the fireplace, handsome in a new black suit, his badge polished and gleaming on his vest. The look on his face as he saw her approach was one Nora knew she would remember forever: wonder, joy, love, all mingled in his clear blue eyes. When Sheriff Hawkins placed her hand in Wyatt's, the connection felt like coming home. The ceremony itself was simple and heartfelt, their vows spoken clearly before God and their community of friends. When Reverend Collins pronounced them husband and wife, Wyatt's kiss was both tender and promising, sealing their commitment to each other. The celebration that followed was joyous, a supper of roast turkey and all the trimmings, followed by dancing to the music of a local fiddler and his companions. Emma, permitted to stay up far past her usual bedtime, eventually fell asleep on a bench, a smile still on her face even in slumber. As the evening drew to a close, Wyatt gathered his new daughter gently in his arms and together with Nora bid farewell to their guests. Their house in town had been prepared for their arrival, with fires lit in the fireplaces and Christmas greenery decorating the mantel, a wedding gift from the townspeople. They tucked Emma into the small bed that had been set up in what would be her room, the little girl barely stirring as Nora removed her shoes and covered her with a warm quilt. "Good night, Papa," Emma murmured sleepily, the words bringing tears to Wyatt's eyes as he bent to kiss her forehead. "Good night, my sweet girl," he whispered. "Sleep tight." Alone at last in their bedroom, Nora and Wyatt stood before each other, suddenly shy despite all they had shared. "Mrs. Nash," Wyatt said softly, taking her hands in his. "I promise you this: I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of the trust you and Emma have placed in me." "And I promise you," Nora replied, her heart full to bursting, "that you will never have cause to regret choosing us as your family." "Never," he agreed, drawing her close. "Not in 1,000 years." As Christmas Eve turned to Christmas Day, Nora Nash fell asleep in her husband's arms, secure in the knowledge that the sanctuary they had found in each other was stronger and more enduring than any walls of wood or stone. From the darkest night of fear in that church tower had come the brightest dawn of love, a love that would sustain them through whatever challenges the future might bring. 5 years later, the Nash family gathered on the front porch of their home, now expanded to accommodate their growing family. Emma, 9 years old and as spirited as ever, sat reading to her 3-year-old brother Thomas, named for the father she still remembered in her heart. Baby Sarah, just 6 months old, dozed in Nora's arms as the summer evening settled around them. Wyatt, now in his second term as sheriff of Redemption Creek, watched his family with quiet pride. The town had grown along with them, a new schoolhouse where Nora still taught 3 days a week, a proper doctor's office, even a small hotel for travelers on the increasingly busy stage line. "Penny for your thoughts, Sheriff," Nora said, noticing his contemplative expression. Wyatt smiled, reaching out to touch Sarah's downy head. "Just counting my blessings, Mrs. Nash, and finding I need all my fingers and toes to do so." Nora's answering smile held all the love that had only deepened with the passing years. "As do I, my love, as do I." As the sun set over the Arizona Territory, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, the Nash family remained on their porch, secure in the knowledge that the love they had found in the most unlikely of circumstances was the greatest treasure of all, a sanctuary of the heart that would shelter them all the days of their lives.